Right, disassembly, reassembly. I'm not going to go over any upgrades for the platform in this video, but that's going to be another video I do later in the week, probably tomorrow. I'll probably upload it a bit later. But essentially, there's a few weird bits to take this apart, but we'll just get straight into it. So, upper is a standard V2 AEG upper. So if you're familiar with AEGs, you know how this all comes apart. Single pin at the front, that just comes out. When you're taking this pin out, it's always going to catch on the dust cover. Fold that in, and it'll slide forward. Or I get caught. Okay, right. Slide that forward. I'm not going to say how to take apart any of the rest of this upper, because it is just a standard V2 AEG upper. One thing I will mention though, is that if you want to change the handguard like I have, it is the same as this one, so it's 2 bolts then off, and then it slides forwards. If you want to change the outer barrel, I will say, just as a warning, it's on fucking tight. Like, I've had to actually abuse this one, and the one in here looks even worse. I won't be able to show you because it's inside, but it's tight. It's very tight. You're going to need to use extreme amount of force with an AR wrench to take the barrel nut off. Just take some time with it. It is a faff, but you will get it off eventually. The only thing I might show you how to take it off is in here. You've got the little plastic blanking plate, which I sell little prints of, and basically what that does is it just blanks off the charging handle, and that just slides straight in the other way. Okay, so yeah, so that's it for the upper, and obviously you take out the inner barrel, and I'll go over doing stuff to this in the upgrade video. But for now, we're just going to focus on taking the LevAR apart. So I'll get rid of these. First thing I'm going to take off is the stock, because it won't fit in the camera if I leave the stock on. It's literally just two, I believe they're 2.5mm hex heads. I think they're N3 by 30 screws if you ever lose them. Literally just take them off like that until they're loose. Just pull out the bottom. Put those one side, and then this is on quite tight, so I usually take probably the rubber side. Just tap. Until it comes off. As simple as that. And we're down to that. If you want to take these off, obviously these are 2 blanks that I sell, so usually you'll have the little shell holder, but it works the same. Thumb screw all the way off, and then that's also how you move around this bit, and also how you adjust the height. And then yeah, you can move these around in any of the slots or whatever. So that's basically it for the stock. The butt pad doesn't come off. If any of the 3D printers want to look at doing a custom one, you can't use this one because I think it's epoxied on, or just very difficult to take off, so I haven't bothered doing that. So that's it for the stock. And then sort of the weirdness starts, because this is sort of unknown territory. So before you do anything else, you'll need to vent. This is currently empty because I've already vented it already for this video. But what you'll have to do is put it on, not on safe, on fire, and just push this forward, and you'll hear it gas out. It will shoot gas out the front. It might make a bit of a squealing noise, like a bit of like raspy like whistle, but that's just how you do it. So once that's vented, you're all safe. Now from here, it's sort of fairly straightforward. So pin out the lever, push the hammer back, and slowly rock the bolts. If you've got one of my short straight kits, that will be a bit more difficult. If you've got one, if you bought in the last few days or so, or when the video is out, you'll have the slightly updated version of this, which makes it a bit easier to take out. So that might take quite a bit of force, and you may find that this surface here gets a bit marked up as it drags across this surface, but it should be fine. Apart from that, bolt comes straight out of the back. I can sit there. So from here, if you want to change the nozzle, which is coming soon, which I'll go over in another video, you can simply push down the tappet plate and push the nozzle back, and it will come all the way out. And that's it. That's your nozzle. That comes out. I can sit over here. Next to do would be to take the reservoir out. 2 pins. You may have to hammer these out initially, but I've done them quite frequently, so they come out quite easily. It's worth noting, these are actually different sizes, despite them being very near each other, and they will only fit flush in one way, which I'll show you when I put that together. So once done that, pull this out the back. You will have your gas reservoir, And then you also have this piece. This piece might sit inside the unit, but it does come out like that. You may notice that I've got one O-ring different. This is something I'm going to go over in the upgrade video. But basically, if you're having leaks and you think you hear it and you think it's coming from this area, replace one of these green O-rings with a 4.5 6.5, which is like 1mm cross section, and it will greatly improve the seal between the reservoir and the internals. So I'll go over that in a bit more detail in the next video. After you've done that, inside here, so I can get you show that, you'll see there's a bolt inside, and you can also see these veins around the bolt itself. This is an indicator that you've got a V2 grip. So if you get to this point and you see you don't have the veins and it's not as bulky, that means you've got a V1 grip. So you should probably speak to G&G or speak to the retailer you got it from if you bought it recently and just say, is it possible to get a V2 grip, or you need to get, because these are the ones that if you have a V1 and you hit the gun incorrectly and it's pressurized, it can crack and then it will blow up. It sounds a bit more dramatic than it is, like for it to explode, but that's the main thing you've got to be careful of. So in there you've got a 4mm bolt. There we go. Right, once it's out, you can probably leave it in there. It's probably better if you just leave it sat on there. And also indicator of V2 grip. Actually, if I take that bolt out quickly, let's get it there. Big raised area on here. So that's your raised area, and you got your veins in there as well. So as long as it's got those two, you're fine with the V2 grip. Don't worry about the number. Every LevAR has 2309 on all the parts that are numbered. There's nothing to do with the grip or anything like that. So from here, but essentially what you have is you have the lower receiver itself, and then you have what I've been calling a gearbox, which is technically not what it is because it has no gears in it, but it is essentially what it is. It's the same material as an AG gearbox, and it has the internals in. It's just a bit easier nomenclature to go with that. So from here, first thing to do is to take off this mag release plate. Really simple, 2.5 Allen key heads, and you've just got 4 all the way around. You might notice that mine has got one of my prints on it, and I'll show you how to install that quickly as well. Essentially, you unscrew all these 4 screws, which I'll speed up. And that comes off. So you've got 4 screws. You may notice that one of them is slightly shorter than the other. That's because I'm using my own tappet plate design, which I'll go over in the upgrades video, but essentially it's got a big extended piece, which means that one of them has to be shorter. Specifically, the top left has to be shorter. I don't know how easy I can demonstrate this, but basically you might be able to see, I don't know if you can quite catch that. You might be able to see the tappet plate moving under that. Well, from your framing, it'll be bottom right, but on the gun, as you look at it from the side, it's top left. That one needs to be a shorter screw. So when I sell tappet plate, which will go up quite shortly, sort of this week, you have to use this length screw, otherwise it will impact the back of the tappet plate. But I'll explain that in the upgrade video. To take this part, you've got, so I can frame this. You can see there's 2 posts that go all the way through. And it's basically just a case of getting something small and just putting a pin through like that. And then this should come loose. Might need to give it some leverage a bit. There we go. So if you want to take that apart, that's how it comes apart. Very simple. Then from here, you've got 2, I believe they're 3mm, big bolts in the side. These are sort of your main retention. There's 1 on each side. And 1 there. Then you've got your safety, which I'm going to put that way, and then it's a 1.5mm hex head. And you undo. I would keep pressure on the switch as you do this, because there is a ball bearing in there. And once it's out, I'm going to take that out, put that to one side. Carefully lift this up, so don't do this on a sloped surface or upside down. And then they'll come out. You'll see there is very tiny spring in here, but G&G from the factory put a lot of lube in there, so it will stay in place, but just remember there is a spring in there, and just be careful not to lose that. So I'll put that over there, and they've also got that ball bearing. Very small. Ooh. But from here, it's technically loose. So I usually pull from the front, like that, and push through. So that's your lower, essentially fully disassembled. The only thing you could take apart is the mag release, but for maintenance or anything like that, there is no reason to take apart this mag release. Right, from here, it's fairly AEG style. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just say as I'm doing this will be a sped up portion. When you reach the last couple, I would keep pressure on the gearbox, as there's a ball bearing spring on the inside that you just need to be aware of. It doesn't actually shoot out. I have had it shoot out, but most of the time mine stays in place. But just be warned that when you take this apart, there is a very heavy spring on a ball bearing that's tensioned with the gearbox. Oh, also, another thing I should mention, shoot the hammer first. Once you've got it out, so it'll cock with that one there, and then you'll have to make sure this is pushed, it'll click, make sure it's decocked, otherwise you'll have that spring force to contend with as well. There we go. Take these bolts in. 2 halves. There is actually another screw on the back of here, but for most maintenance and stuff, you're not going to need to take the actual, what I'm going to call the hammer assembly. You're not going to need to set that off. Hammer and trigger assembly, you're not going to set that off. So from this side, you got your tapper plate. This is how the action is done with the short stroke, and it's also how that moves the nozzle. Moves back and forth like that. Action's off that piece there, and it, as you rotate it back, it pushes it back like that. So to take this one, it's a single Phillips head. This is a very small screw, so be careful not to lose it. And it comes out just like that. Tap plate off. So this is obviously one of my advanced ones, which I'll be putting up this week on the website. This is the stock one. You can see the difference is in that, more advanced piece, then it's also a bit more extended on the prongs. So this side, you can see here, that's my ball bearing, and it's under tension. You may also notice that mine looks kind of deformed, and that's because I had an issue quite early on where it just fired out. As soon as I took the lever out one time, the ball bearing just fired out the front whilst it was being tensioned. And I basically found as soon as I put it under spring tension, it would just launch out. So originally it's a 5mm bearing, and I've had to bore out this area on the sides, and also I've had to do an indent here. I know it's very rough, but it works. And this is to keep it in place. I did talk in my short stroke install about replacing this spring with a lighter one. I would recommend you don't do that, because otherwise the lever itself doesn't hold the indents properly. It's not strong. So keep the stock string and keep the stock ball bearing for as long as you need to. If you find that when you're putting it in, the spring in, and then it's just launching out this way, then you're going to need to look at doing the same modification I've done, which is where I've had to bore out this channel. So for this sake, I'm not going to take this out, but essentially how you would do it is you put the ball bearing on this side, you put this side of the spring in first, and then you're going to want to be pushing down this way. So sort of, you're basically doing like this motion in. The spring will be sat in and up, and you'll be pushing in and across. First thing to do would probably be to take the hammer out. The hammer itself comes out, if you just pull it out like that, and then if you look on the other side, you'll see it's got this long piece, and it sits just like that. So that comes off easily. It's just a piece like that, and then you see this is also in 2 pieces. You've got retaining pin and the actual arm itself. This can come apart. This center piece does actually come out, but I would just keep it in one place. It's just bearing. I would just keep that, keep that very much in there. So from here, you can slightly wiggle this out, and then you've got a connecting rod, and also you've got this nozzle housing here, so you can pull that out. So this is what holds the nozzle housing in. This little sill piece on the bottom is actually sort of loose, and you can move it back and forth, and basically I think it's just to tension the it's just a tension against the end of your connecting silver piece. But that's basically it for this side. So just put that part, sort that. So the hammer assembly itself, essentially what it boils down to is, you can see it quite clearly. You've got a channel for gas here. It sits here, and obviously the valve sits in here as well. And then when you pull the trigger, propels the gas up this tube into the nozzle housing, and there's a little hole. I probably won't be able to show you, but there's a little hole on the bottom side of this. That goes through here and through T-barrel. That's how the propulsion system works. Your release valve is here. I don't actually have any gas keys on me, so I can't show you taking that apart, but it is literally just like a standard valve. You will just be getting a gas key and putting it inside. You see the two teeth. Make sure you can see that. See the two teeth on either side. Pretty simple. You put the gas key in and unscrew it. What I've also just demonstrated there is the safety is just a little lever, and that just sits loose. It sits in this little cavity here, and it just sits loose in there. So if you did that, it would just fall out. For basic maintenance and anything you're likely to be fixing, this is where you can stop. I don't think there's any need to take off this back screw, which pulls this all out, and then that'll also release the things like these trigger bars and things like that. These are all going to be held in place underneath. There's really no reason you need to take that apart. I think for the sake of brevity, I'm not going to take it apart. But yeah, that's where you're at. This is where most of the stuff is going to happen. I'm going to pause there, stop the video, and then I'm going to start reassembly. Right, reassembly then. Camera's probably moved. I've just wanted to organise myself a bit. I'm also going to show you how to reloo, or where to reloo everything that needs to happen in this section. First thing to do is I'm going to put that silver connecting piece back in. I use super lube for basically everything because I'm lazy. You can use more specific lubes like the Waldo stuff, which obviously has 3 sort of tiers, but I'm just going to over lube that and just keep things nice and fresh lube. I did take this apart quite recently, so it's not too much of an issue. So first thing to do is to install this into here. It should have a nice sort of click, and then I'd push that. If you put it in and this button can still be depressed properly, you need to remove this first and then push it out from the inside, and then make sure you can feel it slightly click in. It should be fairly. Once you do it, you'll understand what I mean. Because basically what should happen is, if I just show you this very quickly, a bit hard to see. You should find this side is slightly angled back, and that's how you know it's biting in. So from here, installing back into there, just like that. I'm going to put the tap plate back on. Very simple to do. Single screw in here. This is a bit fiddly because it's basically the smallest part you have to take off. So once it's in, and it will just sit. You can't actually it basically just goes straight to, you can't screw it in anymore, and then your tap plate should move freely underneath. I think my tap plate is like 0.1 mil smaller, so it's probably a bit more loose than yours will be. So next up, we'll just be putting back the shell on, but to do that first, we need to do the hammer. So from opposite sides, you put this little arm on, and then you put the pin through, and then you're holding it like that. And essentially this arm, it goes down the side of this unit, down that little crack there. It's down the side like that. So that pushes in, and then you're going to seat it about there. It is slightly under spring tension, so it won't sit perfectly, but it wonon't matter initially because we haven't put anything back together again. Also, now I think about it, safety. So I've just pulled this back out slightly. Safety just drops in with the flat side facing into the gearbox and the triangle side facing out. So it won't particularly matter which way you put it in, but I'm going to put it in just like that with the arm here, so it rotates like that, up and then down again. So that's how the safety works. It simply just blocks the hammer. So once that safety is back in, hammer can go in, sits above like that. Then we've done that, it should be as simple as putting the gearbox housing back on. So as I said, I'm not having issues with this ball bearing, but you may find it's a bit of a faff to get it in and then get the gearbox on. It seems to vary from gun to gun. So tap plate needs to be slightly, make sure it's in the back rear position, and then you might find the piece, like the piece at the bottom of the nozzle housing is not quite sitting right. Just going to put one of the screws through there so it stays in place. Right, I'm going to speed a lot of that up. Basically, sometimes it takes a bit of fiddling to get this side sitting flush. But the main thing to do is to make sure that this hammer piece, this rotational piece, is sitting behind the gearbox. And then from there, it's just a case of getting all the screws back in. Screws in place, very simple. I do the hammer one first because that sits slightly higher. I do the trigger one, and I'll do the front one. Right, so from here, before you go anything further, I would just check that everything is working properly. So pull that, push the back, click, and it shoots. So that's fine. And top plate moves freely. And then the only thing to be considerate of is to make sure the safety is sat properly, which in this case it is. So from here, I'll be reinstalling the nozzle next. So it's really important that you keep this nozzle lubed. I think in general, if your regular maintenance for this gun is just doing the O-rings and stuff around the silver connector piece I've mentioned, is to keep this nozzle lube. Because if you get any friction here at all, you risk breaking the tap plate. Not as in my printed ones, as in the tap plate in general can get stuck. I was experimenting using a different bucking, the Mad Bull red bucking, and I found that when the hop was applied a certain amount, it was actually getting caught in the hop unit. It was grabbing the nozzle and holding it there, so there's friction, and as it pulled back, it can snap the prongs off. So yeah, just something to be aware of. So on the stock tap plate, you might not need to do this, but on my tapper plate, which has a little bit of a grab to it, I'm just going to put a little pin in it and just push up, and you'll see it sort of slightly bite in. It's not a great deal amount of friction. Obviously, I've got lube in there as well, so it's kind of loose. But yeah, you've got to make sure this is moving freely. And that's basically all your functioning parts back in place. So from here, it's just a case of returning it back into the low receiver. So cock hammer first, bring that in, just like that. And then here I would actually decock it. And same as before, you've got two big screws on the side. So put it back in. So it's also the same for installing one of my printed ones. You just slide in like that. Post through one side. Now I like to do one post on the other side. This is just a thing I do with pin mags. It's just a habit I have. You don't need to do this. And then you just want to make sure that they're completely flush on there. And so, like I said, I've got a slightly different one. So I need to use this is a cut down M3x8 that goes in the top left as you're looking onto the side of the gun, and the rest just go in the sides. And I'll just speed up me installing these. 2.5mm again. So more important when you're using custom tappet plates, and not just mine, not just my printed one, not just a stock one, is to make sure after you've screwed that screw in and it's tight, make sure there's no friction again. You just have to make sure that there's no, it doesn't bite or do anything like that. Also, this is a good way of getting the lube moved around inside the nozzle housing. Just get it really moved in, make sure it's all happy. Next to do is safety. The easiest way to do this is to put the arm on and just make sure that you've got it. You can see it moving in there. You can see how it basically works is that's in fire. It allows the hammer to go down freely, or it's in safe and the hammer is locked. It can't depress. So fire, safe. The reason I've done that is because sometimes the safety can sit slightly off axis, and obviously it'll only screw in one way. So what I would do is I'd get your ball bearing, I put it in the fire indent. I see. There we go. And then I put it on just like that. That should sit on. And I'll just make sure that it's in the correct thing. So fire, safe. And then keep pressure on that so the ball bearing doesn't escape. 1.5mm. And just screw in until relatively tight. Should be just snug basically, doesn't need to be that tight. And just check that safety works, and also check it goes into the indents properly. You can also check it functions, so you'll have a kind of spring back when it's in fire. When it's in safe, it will just stop. There we go. So that's all sorted. That's basically all your gearbox internal bits back together. So the next thing to do would be to put the grip back on. So as I said, 4mm. So it feels like mine's actually bit into the grip a bit, that's fine. Put it on like that. It's tightening up. One thing to mention whilst I'm doing this, these have a tolerance where the grip can rotate slightly, even if the screw is really, really put down. So even if you very much torqued down, it's still going to rotate just a little bit. What you'll find when I mentioned the O-rings earlier is that if you've got the standard green O-ring on this side, you'll find that sometimes it can leak when it's rotated one way and then seal when it's rotated the other way. If you have your bigger O-ring in, which is the 4.5, 6.5, instead of the, I believe these are 4.3, 6.3 on the G&G ones themselves, so these are slightly oversized. If you've got this in, it should make a difference whether it's angled one way or not. I try and make sure that that groove here is lined up with the other one and then tightened down, but sometimes it can be a bit difficult. So make sure that screw is really, really tight. Right, there you go. So I'm putting on there quite tight because I know that I don't want to have to deal with leaks or whatever frequently, so I just make sure it's quite tight. So again, you've got a connector piece. I'll just reload this. I'd like to point out, yes, I'm using excessive amounts of super glue, but I like using this stuff. So remember, just if you have done this O-ring mod, just make sure the green goes inside. The green one is actually quite happy on the reservoir side, so I haven't felt the need to, upgrade that O-ring on the reservoir side, but on the internal gearbox side, that's absolutely a must. And then that simply slots in like that. And then with the pins I mentioned earlier, they are about 1 or 2 millimeters bigger on one side than the other. So you can see that one is slightly longer than the other. Short one, top, and long one on the bottom. So simply just push in, and then they don't need to be super flush. Mine are quite loose actually, now that they've been out so many times. All right, last thing to do on the internal side is to get the bolt and leave it back in. Got the hammer, bolt in to about there. Remember my little trick from the short strike install, push that back, lever in. It should line up with this hole in the bolt on the side there. Go a bit more in depth in my LevAR short strike video. Goes forward, rocks forward. That'd be a lot easier without a short strike kit in there, but most people can be running them, so I'm gonna keep that in. Bolt through, just double check action. Most important thing when you're checking your LevAR is working properly, even if you have issues with feeding, anything like that, is your nozzle is retracting and going forward properly. If you have any issues with feeding, anything like that, first thing to check is check the nozzle is moving properly, and then if it doesn't look doesn't look quite right, take the bolt out and check the tappet plate is on properly, as that's where I found most of the issues people have with feeding stems from. So from here, stop back on, kind of squeeze it on. You probably still need to tap it from the top. There we go. 2.5 mils, straight through. You have to push it all the way through before you start screwing it, otherwise it won't bite in. It's quite a shallow thread interface on the other side. Like that. I should just mention, even though I put the stock back on, you technically don't need to take the stock off to do any of the maintenance I've just mentioned. It's I've just done it for space on my desk. So if you're if you want to do this in a bit of a quicker fashion, you can just leave the stock on, and then you can just take the 2 pins out, and then that entire reservoir bit comes out. I've just taken it off just to demonstrate taking everything out. And then from here, it would just be a case of reinstalling the upper, which I put on the other side of the room, so I have to go grab. So upper's back. Obviously, make sure you've got your hop unit and thing in there. Get it as central as possible. Also make sure the dust cover is closed, because that'll make it a lot easier. This is standard V2AG stuff, no space magic here. One thing you might have to do is center the hop unit with your left hand, and once you pushed it in, push that through, and then there you are, back to lever action in. One thing to note is you can actually see, if you're ever troubleshooting in the field, is you can actually see that, sorry, it's a bit awkward to show, you can see the nozzle retracting inside your hop unit. If you have issues with feeding, have a look in there and make sure you can see that going backwards and forwards. And then yeah, that's it. Simple disassembly and reassembly, and hopefully showing you everything you need to know about taking it all apart. Later in the week, I'll be doing an upgrade video where I go over upgrades such as buckings, inner barrels, adjustable nozzles, all the upgrade stuff. I'll upload that probably tomorrow or later in the week. So yeah, hopefully that's helped you out.